This is The Wilderness and the Wellspring, a podcast about exploring the creative process. I'm your host, Jeff Lunt. This is episode 21. Sean.O, a previous guest on the podcast, comes back and we debrief about my own indie game release around Stranger Sips, and I catch up with Sean on what he's been working on. All right. Sean.O, welcome back. I haven't done one of these episodes in, 8 months, something like that. How have you been?
I've been alive. I've been surviving.
Yeah.
8 months. Is that when we last spoke or just the last episode in general?
It was the last episode in general.
What's happened in 8 months? I had to do a refresher in advance of this of like, what have I done since then? Just because I really haven't done much in the last 3 to 4 months in terms of side projects, hence just surviving. But yeah, I'm sure a lot has happened in 8 months for both of us in various ways and for the rest of the world. So happy to be here and helping kick things back off.
Yeah, I just went back to see when I last had you on, and it was actually 2 episodes ago. So it was, I think, 8.5 months when you and I last spoke. So yeah, weird. I've let this slide because I went, as you know, you and I have been talking privately, and I've been talking on the Mud Coders Slack about trying to promote Stranger Sips and doing various marketing experiments and stuff, most of which were fine, but they were just like expensive and they weren't any more effective than the cheaper, a little bit more organic, a little bit more just smaller scale stuff. So yeah, I don't know. It's been a year that Stranger Sips has been out as of the end of July, since it's been like publicly available, which felt like a big achievement for me. And then I had on my bucket list, so to speak, to like release a commercial indie game as an indie developer, and people have actually paid money for Stranger Sips, which is really cool. Not enough to make up its cost, but still.
Nice. Yeah, that's something you can check off at least. It has had some revenue. It is completed. It's feature complete. And I know you have like a backlog or to-do list of things that could be added. But as it is, it's a complete playable experience, and it's out there in the world, which is nice. And yeah, we've talked a little bit about this, but not super recently, but I do want to hear your post-mortem on the marketing efforts and like retaining players, getting new players. You mentioned that you weren't seeing a huge return on investment compared to just casually or organically marketing versus paying somebody to help out, which is really interesting. And maybe just learning that is worth, I don't want to speak for you, but maybe that's worth the amount paid just to find out like, oh, I could do something more natural and casual and still have the same impact. Well, let me save myself some money, and maybe other folks could learn from your experience also.
Sure. Yeah. So the approach evolved a little bit. So when I first launched the game, I wasn't integrated with any kind of payment system. So it was just free completely. It was sort of close to the experience that it is today. But you may remember there was actually a web-based Godot client that at the very beginning version, there was this funky background music and it was all pixel art. And that was cool. It was like a cool aesthetic, but over time I just wound up trying to make it more just accessible and familiar to people. So I made it look like a chat app because that's the core mechanic of how it works. And so in that early stage, I got actually thousands of people to try it. But for one, there was no way to pay for anything. And I also found that people weren't really sticking around. I mean, a very small percentage of people would keep coming back every day and play. But there was a super high churn rate where people would try it for maybe a couple of days and then kind of disappear. That was a good learning phase in terms of the free part of freemium, because I hadn't built out the payment stuff yet. And what I found there is that it's pretty cheap to get a lot of people to at least try something. I also, what was I using? Oh, I was running ads, I think on X. And so that would get a lot of people in the door. It was a weird time, like late fall of last year. And being an advertiser on X was also a very, very strange time, late 2024. You had the full range and everybody was like hyped up to the max. So you had people that were like, hey, is this AI powered? Is the chat experience driven by that? I was like, yeah. And some people were like, oh, that's cool. A lot of people were just like, oh my God, you're destroying the world. Like, okay. I think it's a game and it's not that serious. But yeah, then I got a lot of people that would just try it out and would discover something that they found was really interesting. You like create characters and go on these stories that were very self-directed. And the whole setting of the game is that you kind of start out meeting a stranger at a coffee shop. You know just a little bit about them, like their name and what they do for a living. But the cool thing is that the characters would kind of role play and you could suggest things. And because it was driven by an LLM on the back end, it would kind of go along with you. And you could, I mean, I had adventures where I got caught up in like organized crime and was like running for my life. I had, characters where there was like a romance arc. There was other things where one of my favorite examples that I saw from other players was someone would sit down and the player would role play as like a private investigator and they would like confront the person as if they caught them doing something and then say like, no, I've got all these photos and stuff. And you'd like watch the character have to face the fact that they were trying to cover up this secret in their life or something like that. So it was really kind of interesting and dynamic. But so the players that really got that, I think, found it really interesting. And then from the marketing side, yeah, it was relatively easy to get people in the door to try it. But there's this concept from e-commerce called high intent customers, which is like if you put a little bit of a barrier or some kind of carrot for people to reach for, you can get customers that are higher intent, meaning like they're more likely to convert or pay or something like that.
Yeah.
So before I even had the payment solution in at all, the only thing was I just had a lot of people just trying it out. Then around Thanksgiving of last year, I think is when I turned on the payment system. No, that's actually when I turned on the automatic emails, I think. So that I can't remember now. So there was two big things that changed late last year. One was integrating Stripe so I could ask for payment for game credits and stuff. And the other was setting up an email system that would automatically email players, which required you to actually register with an email address, right? So this was another gap in why I had so many people trying but not sticking around, is that you didn't even have to sign up for an account or give me any way to reach out to you in the early days. And so you would disappear and I couldn't do anything to invite you to come back or remind you that the game existed. And so as soon as it was out of your mind, you were just gone. As soon as, yeah.
That's kind of a risk with having a low barrier to entry, which I think is really celebrated and like hyped up in online gaming and even newer MUDs that people make, newer MMOs where you can drop it and play without making an account. You have the low barrier to entry, but also low level of commitment and no way to necessarily get people back in the door.
Mm-hmm.
So I ran into that on the other side of things where when I did have email, I don't even know that I required it, but it seemed like it was required. And that was gatekeeping some people from playing. So it's a double-edged sword for sure.
Yeah. I did notice a drop off in the total number of new people, because even without accounts, it was just all anonymous accounts. So I could still track the number of unique people that were coming into the game. But when I added email login, it was just email and password. And there was like a big drop off. But then once I had the email, I noticed, even though that the whole number of new people dropped way off, the number of daily messages actually went up, because now I could send daily reminders. People would be like, hey, come back and play. And you could, of course, just click one button and not be emailed again if you wanted. But that really helped, like, retention, basically, and getting people reminded that the game was there and to come back. And then when I added social login, so I added Gmail, Facebook, and X, that's when I started to really see the user numbers turn around. I thought, so coming from my background, I tend to not sign into things with my Gmail account because I just want a separate email and password for everything, kind of thing. And so I was going into it with this mindset that, like, I think most people are that way, but it turned out not at all. Once I added the social login and you could also use email and password, people use the social login almost exclusively, even though they had the option and it was right there. That was a bit of a surprise for me. It makes sense in retrospect, especially on mobile, because signing up for an account on a new service is a real pain unless you sign in with some social thing. And speaking of to-do lists you mentioned before, I never did go back and do this, but I should have added Apple sign-in, because what I heard in the industry at large is that so many people try new things on their phone that if you either have Google sign-in or Apple sign-in, most users will prefer the sign-in that's attached to their phone. And at least for the Google example, that I saw that play out for sure. Like, there's more Google sign-ins than anything, even though the main promotion I was doing was on X. So you would think there'd be a lot more X sign-ins, but actually very, very few.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense about mobile users. And I've never had an iPhone, so I kind of forget that Apple login is a thing. And I resent when things like for work require me to use Apple login, because I just don't remember my password. But yeah, that's a good anecdote. Probably more the merrier for different sign-in methods. Did it? What was like the lift for kind of implementing all of that versus just like email password?
It was easier. If I could do it again, I'd probably flip it around. Like, once I had social login, so few people use email and password. On a future project, I might consider not even adding email and password, actually. I totally get where you're coming from, where, like, when it's not even an option, I kind of like raised eyebrow. I'm like, really? But it turns out most people, they just prefer the simple login. So.
Oh yeah, I definitely default to my Google login.
Oh, okay.
With only a handful of exceptions, if it's available. And then for email and password, I even have that stored in Google. So I'm probably saying too much. Please, like, nobody hack me. But yeah, that's definitely huge and something to consider for any project that requires logging in. I did have a question about user retention that relates to like a phenomenon I've noticed the past few months, or like read about. Because you mentioned starting Stranger Sips at kind of the peak of AI hype and skepticism in certain ways. And now, like several months later, when I tried Stranger Sips, it seemed to me to be both like a role-playing game, like you said, also like an AI sandbox. Like, I enjoyed kind of poking at the boundaries of it and seeing if I could break things or mess them up and, break the fourth wall. And it also seemed like a decent like social simulator. Like, if you play it in a straightforward way, whether you're playing as a character or playing as yourself, like a small talk simulator. And I had some thoughts here and there, like, oh, this might be useful for someone who has social anxiety to kind of practice and then, go out and try to talk to people. I don't know how realistic that is. I'm not a therapist, so don't, take that with a grain of salt. But there's been a phenomenon lately, and I wonder if you've seen this with users that are like whale users that are on there a lot, of people doing that with the more general purpose LLMs like ChatGPT, Claude, etc., where they are like making the chatbot their friend and like sometimes even their romantic partner. Like there's an AI boyfriend subreddit that's been going viral. And I'm like, wow, that seems very extreme. Clearly there's like a people can get sucked into this, maybe there are people who are very susceptible to this. And I'm wondering if you saw in your analytics or your users that maybe are still playing it, a sign that people were like using this to supplant like their social or like fill a void in their social life in some way.
Not as far as I can tell. Like, there's one example that comes to mind that is like a maybe. There was someone who reached out to me as a user and asked for kind of a check-in feature, which I actually have mostly finished, and that'll probably be the next small feature I do. But the idea was they were looking for a thing where they could set up a chat and then set like a little alarm where every day the character in the chat would email them or contact them to say, hey, just checking in. And I think this person was working on some kind of health goal and just wanted like a friendly sounding supportive outreach to keep them motivated. Even in that case, I don't read players' chat logs unless they have some kind of technical issue they asked me to look into, or there's some kind of system issue. But I did have a lot of chats with players over email and stuff about how they're using it and stuff. And yeah, I got the impression that as far as I know, nobody's really using it that way. The game is like 18 plus. It's like a M-rated game effectively. So I do kind of wonder if that plays into it. So I actively look for anyone that seems underage, and I'm just like, hey, this is not the game for you. Thanks for trying it, but whatever. And I wonder if that plays a factor, like myself and people from my generation, like, most of our childhood, we didn't have the internet at all. So it wasn't even an option to kind of do that. So I don't know if that's a factor, but from what I've seen, most people seem to have a pretty clear distinction. That's like, this is a game experience. People are going on some kind of adventure or living out some kind of fantasy or something like that. I didn't see like the AI romantic partner stuff really. Now, that's not to say people didn't, have sexy chats basically, but I didn't see the evidence that people were like relying on it for that social connection like you were talking about.
Yeah, that's interesting. Maybe the game wrapper / framing kind of kept, kind of like shattered the illusion that maybe people are developing in these other chatbots that like they're talking to a sentient thing. Because it was very clearly in Stranger Sips usually good at playing a character, but certainly not sentient. And sometimes not even, sometimes it wouldn't play along and I'd be like, come on, like have a little fun. But yeah, I know what you mean. That's interesting. And the feature requests you mentioned with like the email is also, I think, something that other like chat services are implementing now. Like there's an app called Auren, AUREN. And I think that's their like one of their killer features versus ChatGPT is like it will quote unquote text you on your phone.
Mm-hmm.
And so it'll have like a push notification and it has a memory and it has different personalities you can pick from to, I was talking with a friend who was using it to hold himself accountable for, like you said, fitness goals and other self-improvement stuff. And so it would text him like, hey, have you done that thing you mentioned the other day?
Mm-hmm.
Well, why not? What's keeping you from doing that? And I was like, oh, that's, that sure is something. But yeah, reminds me of that. And in that way, it's kind of, it has the game framework, like I said, but maybe can be extended beyond that, which is pretty interesting. So it's interesting to hear that you didn't necessarily see a ton of people doing that, but maybe here and there. Yeah. And as far as filling the void in social life, I say all of that without judgment. Like people can get hooked on anything, whether it's a chatbot or like any sort of video game, AI or otherwise, any other experience. So, I get it.
Yeah, it was an interesting experience from my point of view too. Just first of all, running an online game that is just on all the time, but it's running on the systems that I'm managing, as opposed to, a game on somebody's system, on somebody's computer, because I think it led to more player interaction than I kind of expected. I mean, I guess I should have expected that, but growing up thinking about making games, it just felt like something you would like build and you'd ship on a disc and people would get it somehow, and then you'd probably never hear from them again, right? But just the fact that it's online and there's like a support button or a feedback button directly in the game, and people reach out to you. So that was really interesting, just kind of having that connection. But then if I look at like the percentage of registered accounts versus the number of people I talk to, it's like a very small percentage. So it's not like half the players or anything. It's like single digits percentage. But the people that did want to connect, we exchange emails back and forth, and I still do. And I don't know, it's kind of fun. I always was hesitant in a way, because I thought like I would get just a bunch of support emails. Like I was going into it with my IT background thinking the only reason people are going to contact me is because there's a problem, which is an unfortunate framing. I think when you release a game and people are enjoying it, actually most of the time people reach out to because they think it's interesting or it's cool. They have a feature request or something like that. But I actually haven't run into anybody who was really upset or disappointed, other than like when the site was occasionally down for like, an hour or so. But those are really easy. I would just like fix it. I would notice it, email them back, say, hey, sorry it was down. Yeah, got it fixed. Everything should be good. But everybody was super cordial. The only exception is anyone who tried it for like 5 seconds and immediately didn't like it would sometimes sound off on what they felt. And it took me a while to get used to getting out of that sort of IT support mindset where, I was thinking of every interaction as like a support ticket and how can I help this person out, whatever. In this thing, it was more like, hey, I'm doing this creative thing. I'd like you to try it. It would be great. But if you don't like it, that's fine. And so I had to change my mindset so that the people who just hated it right up front didn't bug me. It's like, well, okay. They played it for 5 seconds. Like, that's fine. They don't have to like it. And then I would just move on with my life,
Yeah, that's definitely, you're not alone in that phenomenon. Following a lot of indie artists or game developers who release games on Steam and other platforms, there is a phenomenon of people playing for 2 minutes and leaving a negative review. And yeah, they just, maybe need an outlet of some kind to say like, hey, I didn't like this. And it's, there's only so much you can do. You're not going to please everybody. But that is interesting to hear that it was not, mostly support stuff, and there was some kind of valuable dialogue that happened with users. I think that's super positive.
Yeah, and I think the thing that was toughest for me was just getting used to not responding to the negative comments on social media. It's not even that there was very many, but like you said, it takes almost no time to just leave like a drive-by negative comment or something.
Right.
And my instinct is to reply. But then, of course, because this is, we're living in the age of LLMs everywhere. It's funny now to think how often many of those things could be bots. So it's a trap even to.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's a trap to fall into the pattern of trying to please everybody.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And that can go very sideways, like responding to negative feedback. Whether you respond to it negatively or just like a thanks for your feedback, usually the latter is pretty harmless, but I've seen instances where people really nosedive their whole game or business or whatever by responding negatively to criticism. Interestingly enough, on the other side of that, I've seen people go viral for like, going low when someone else is going low. And kind of roasting people who give negative feedback, and then that blows up and gets them more attention. So you never really know in our day and age with viral marketing and with big brands jumping in on like roasting people and stuff like that, even how things might go. It's just a risk,
For sure. Yeah. So what I found worked for me is Like I literally ignore anything negative. It doesn't mean that I don't take the feedback if somebody's got a bit of feedback in there about something that could be improved. But if somebody's upset, and especially if they played the game for 2 minutes, I'm just like, okay, whatever, and I just literally don't respond. There was one example actually that was a little bit weird. This was a couple of months ago. I got this notification on Facebook that someone had posted like, oh, hey man, your game's terrible. And I tried to reach out to support and nobody responded for days. I'm just trying to log in. Login doesn't work. And I had read so many just like kind of flyby comments at that point. So several months in, I was like, is this real? I'm like checking the game. I'm like, everything's up, it's fine. It turned out it was a real user who had actually tried to message me on Facebook, but I turned off Messenger notifications. So I didn't get the notification he tried to send me. And he was like legit trying and really had been trying to reach out for a week. I felt terrible. I was like, oh crap. I was like, well, now I'm really in one of those situations where I piss somebody off and it's my fault. So I was like, hey, so-and-so, looked into it. Hey, can you tell me the email address you tried to use to log in so I can like check to see what's going on? And it turned out there was a real issue. And it just turned out to be like he was trying the password reset thing, but I didn't have any monitoring to see if anybody was like trying it over and over and like not having success. And so I fixed that, but I also was able to get his password reset. And then he then like basically rescinded everything publicly and was like, oh, thank you so much. I've been wanting to try this. I was really eager to try out this game. And I was just so disappointed that I couldn't try it. And like, once I fixed his issue, he like went from basically publicly roasting me and be like, I hope your game fails or whatever. He didn't say that exactly, but to just completely 180. He's like, oh, thank you finally for fixing this. I appreciate it. And then he became like a regular player. So
nice. Yeah. Sounds like you took the right track to kind of deal with someone who's kind of a legitimate frustrated player and not just a troll,
Yeah. Well, the thing is, you never know if it's a troll or not going in, right? So I basically responded neutrally first because I'm just like, I'm not going to engage. I'm going to basically check to see if this is real, but in the most neutral way possible. Because there was one other example, and I think this has literally only happened. Like, this is the only other time this has happened. Somebody left a comment on one of my social media posts that said something like, yeah, interesting game, reminds me of Valhalla, I think, which is that chat game that takes place in the coffee shop.
Oh, yeah. I think I played that some years ago. VA. It's Valhalla, but it's like stylized to be cyberpunk. VA 11, Hall A.
Yeah, it's yeah, exactly.
Very similar aesthetic, but
yeah,
more like a puzzle / point and click deal.
Right, and there was like a mini game where you make a latte art or something, I think, in the coffee you're making.
Yeah, so you're like assembling the ingredients for a cocktail or a coffee.
So this person had said that, and you were the one that told me about that game, and I was like, oh, that's really cool. And I responded, I was like, oh, thanks, I'm glad you had a good experience or whatever. He's like, oh, I didn't have a good experience. Your game is trash. He's like, it reminds me of Valhalla, except your game seems like a really low rent version. I was like, oh, okay.
Yikes.
I was like, thanks. Bye.
Yeah. I mean, that's rough, but it sounds like it's not for that person. Like, they're also totally different games. It's like,
yeah.
I don't know, comparing Tetris to like Myst. You know what I mean? Or like comparing Myst to like Doom, right? They're both first person. So of course they're going to be the same game. Well, turns out they have very different experiences. So that happens. You get drive-by people. I've gotten the same with Nemesis because people expect it to be like other top-down games, and it's like not exactly, or it's a mishmash. So it's just a mismatch of expectations. It happens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But yeah, overall, I'd say it's been really positive. I mean, the main thing for me was just reminding myself that for every negative comment, there was hundreds of people that were either not saying anything and playing and not complaining, or saying positive things. So I was like, okay, clearly I shouldn't take this one bit of negative feedback as like so bad. I mean, it's like, yeah, 1 out of maybe 300 or 400 people. It's like, I don't know. I don't know what my problem is, that I couldn't let it go easily, but now it's much easier for me. So it's good practice, I guess.
For sure. That's key, is like not taking that kind of stuff personally. It can be tough when it's something you've worked on for a while and that you take seriously, but it's, in the end, it's not personal. These are just random strangers, and some people like to just fling their thoughts out there into the ether.
Yeah. Yeah. Other than that, I mean, that was probably the experience, what the experience was like up until about January of this year or so. They added a Stripe integration, and then I added a couple other follow-up kind of keep you engaged features, all of which had like a one-click unsubscribe. And I found that that's been, I mean, the game's still growing slowly, but it's kind of on a rhythm. I mean, other than that, like once I could actually accept payment, I also did some work a couple months ago to reduce the cost of the hosting for the game. It was a couple $100 at its peak per month. And I, just fixed some bugs basically in the code, like really inefficient things that was eating up some costs. And I got it down to less than half of that. And that made it so that the regular monthly income was more than the hosting costs, which is nice. I mean, I still didn't make back all the initial sort of promotion money and trying to work with a marketing contractor there for a couple of months, but it's self-sustaining from here forward. So, and I don't see any reason why I need to stop hosting the game, so I could probably just leave it running for a few years, maybe add a few features here and there. And it seems to have a little bit of an audience, which is cool. So in addition to releasing the thing, I feel like it's a small audience, but yeah, they keep coming back. So that's pretty cool.
Nice. Are you able to talk a little bit about kind of the current audience numbers, and maybe a little bit about the work with the marketing contractor, like how that went and why you decided to start it and why you decided to maybe end the contract?
Yeah. So audience numbers really small. We're talking like 500, a little bit over 500 registered accounts. Out of those, the core game follows kind of like one of those, I forget what it's called, like the power distribution or whatever. So it's like maybe 10%, 90% of players will just kind of try it and churn and leave. About 10% or so will try it for a while and keep coming back, but never really convert to paying players. Because I still have like a daily free credits if you play every day kind of thing. And about 1% of people like are not only regular players, but paying players, and like paying a lot. So I don't want to say how much any one player paid, but let's just say I'm kind of surprised. I'll say it was more than a couple $100. And for a while, it just was sometimes every other day. This person was putting like another coin in the machine, so to speak. And I was kind of surprised. So what that tells me is if I could get the total audience size up higher and those percentages stayed the same, that the game could continue to be self-sustaining. For my first indie game, I'm happy with the learnings. I mean, so I'll say that much. As far as the marketing stuff, okay, so my thinking here was I had payment set up. I had the automated email follow-ups to kind of keep reminding people the game was there. And I had a flow where if I could get enough people interested, a certain percentage of them seemed to stick around. So I thought, okay, do I have something where if I just market it more, then those like new signups will just keep going up and up and up, right? And like, so for every so many players, you get a few paying ones, and then your paying revenue gets a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger, and you can kind of reinvest that. And the idea is you grow, right? So that's the theory. If you have this like self-sustaining funnel that's like really tight and stuff. Go ahead.
I was going to say, yeah, it sounds like you set up your whole funnel and analytics to keep track of it, which is smart. Similar to any SaaS or, a lot of what you did reminds me of live games, live service games in general that try to keep you coming back every day with emails. You didn't do this exactly, but like daily, weekly challenges, things like that,
Mm.
and daily freebies to keep people going, even if they can't or don't want to pay for more. All probably lessons that anyone doing like a live service game of any kind could apply.
Yeah, I tried to do the basics and nothing crazy. I mean, I didn't go full loot box or anything. There was no gambling aspect or no intermittent reward aspect. It was just a straight like, hey, here's what chat credits cost. You get 50 free credits a day just for coming back. And I'd be happy to let you chat as much as you want, basically. And with that, that's where I got that core audience that there was a good chunk of them, about 10%, that would use up their free credits every day for months and occasionally, buy additional credits. But then I had a few people that were just like way outsized buying a lot of credits. But it was really clear what the transaction was, right? And yeah, it didn't do any of the daily challenges or any of that sort of, other than just reminding you that the game was there and you're welcome to come back. Didn't push hard on anybody at all. But yeah, to your point, yeah, I tried to set up the basic statistics so I knew basically what it costs to get a certain number of accounts to sign up and what percentage of those people would convert, and then tried to figure out, well, how much money would I need to put in to get to a certain size to where it would be hopefully self-sustaining. And the thinking with the marketing contractor that I worked with for between 1 and 2 months was that it's expensive, a couple grand a month. But the idea is if I had a dedicated person that's all they did, could they get the daily signups way up by focusing on organic posts and that kind of thing? And maybe if I'd done it longer, there's always that in the back of your mind kind of thing, like, well, maybe I just didn't do it for enough months or whatever. But what I saw was that there was zero uptick at all in terms of daily signups. The daily signups were directly proportional to how much ad spend. So the paid promotion I was doing, it had basically no correlation to how much organic stuff I was doing. I suspect that had mostly to do with the game was still so unknown that just getting out there in front of people at all had a bigger effect than anything else. If I ever got around to adding like a referral program or something where like you get free credits for telling your friend about it and having them sign up or something like that, that would probably be like a similar bump in retention numbers as when I implemented email in the first place. So if I keep going, I'll probably just keep investing in these sort of light encouraging of engagement without, I don't like the heavy-handed stuff personally. I just find it annoying when games and experiences try to do that. But like simple things like, hey, get free credits for referring a friend.
Yeah, it gets to be a lot. And a lot of them use the same patterns. Well, one thing you could try potentially, and I've played games that do this, is like for users that have been idle for longer, offer bigger rewards for them to come back.
Mm-hmm.
In addition to the referral stuff. Like, oh, you haven't played in 3 months? Well, here's, 5 days worth of free credits if you log in right now.
Yeah, the old coupon trick, right?
Pretty much, yeah. And then, but yeah, on the heavy-handedness, I mean, I have fallen off the wagon a bit in terms of like during COVID, I got a little bit into like online, like competitive first-person shooters and stuff like that. And then I stopped because I was able to go back outside and touch grass.
Yeah.
And then throughout various other times, kind of played some mobile games. And then more recently had some friends getting me into Magic the Gathering. And that has a free-to-play PC and mobile game version, which is good for like learning the mechanics of the game. But all of these games, all the mobile games, all the FPS games, the Magic the Gathering game, they all have the same stuff. It's all the same. And it's very clear when you look at it, like, oh, this is trying to get me hooked. It's like a digital drug dealer, and like recognizing that that's what's going on
Mm,
is almost off-putting, because then it's like, oh, I've got the battle pass here, but they call it something different. And
mm,
it's
mhm,
got the tokens you earn just by playing, and then it also has the tokens you have to pay for, and there's like a shop, and you can get cosmetics, or you can play to win or pay to win. And it's got the, you know, daily, weekly, seasonal challenges just to keep you coming back over and over again and getting the dopamine hit. So definitely a good idea to strike a balance between like, yeah, you want to retain people, keep them coming back, keep people playing regularly for free if they want to do that. Maybe make some revenue if that is your aim, to kind of at least be self-sustaining, but not necessarily pile on all of the tricks to turn it into like a digital crack den,
mhm.
because definitely that's something that people can see and recognize and either see right through sometimes, or in other cases be extremely susceptible to. So yeah, there's a balancing act there for sure.
Yeah, for sure. How do you feel about cosmetics in games, by the way? Like one game that kind of reminds me of that is Crossy Road back in the day. I wound up, because they had additional characters that had they were like a little faster, or they had some tweak to them, or they were just fun, or they unlocked themed levels or whatever, and they were all like $1 a piece. I think I bought probably 10 or 20 characters, like 99 cents at a time. And I thought that I particularly liked that game, and it was just fun. It just reminded me of the old school Frogger, but it was a way to like stop playing whenever I'd had the fun I was having, and it didn't cost me any more than I was willing to pay. And I thought that was kind of fun. I think they maybe, and I'm talking about like the first year it came out. I don't know what else they might have added since then. They did have some kind of digital loot box thing, but it wasn't a paid thing at the time. It was just like if you logged in like every day, or if you played every day, or if you like played every day for a week or something, you could earn little freebies, which I do think was, intended to just keep you playing, which would encourage you to buy more characters and stuff. But it wasn't like, first of all, it wasn't crazy expensive, and there seemed to be like a direct, like, it wasn't a pay to win or anything like that either. But anyway, my question is like, what do you think about cosmetics and like the gentle ramps like that, where what you're getting for what you're paying is like super clear, and there's
Right.
no funny stuff,
Yeah. That's not usually something I mind, just because you can ignore it, right? It's not as nefarious as like a pay to win where you're paying to unlock like a faster, experience point gain or other perks in the game. It's just kind of this, not to frame it in too negative of a light, but like a conspicuous consumption thing where it's like, hey, look at this cool thing that I paid for to support this game, or because I wanted it. And, a lot of times games will let you unlock some of that for free if you just play a lot. So you're either paying with your attention or with your money. But yeah, that's a little, it can still prey on people's sense of FOMO.
Hmm.
But like I said, a little less nefarious than like an actual pay to win mechanic. And generally, when I've bought into stuff like that, or like a battle pass system or whatever, I try to keep it in the scale of like not paying more than what I would pay for, like, if this were a game I bought off a shelf that was in a disc.
Mm-hmm.
So like playing like Among Us when it was a huge hit during the pandemic and stuff, I think I did probably pay like $5 that you can then use to buy skins or something like that. Because I was like, well, this is free on mobile at least, but I've played it so much that I may as well pay for it and probably pay the same amount that I would if it were a mobile game with a single cost, right?
Hmm.
So is it something that I would want to implement in a game? Like, personally, I don't know that I would. I would almost rather go with like Yeah, like just a one-time cost or like a subscription, or like I thought about doing this if I ever finish any of my projects, but especially something like Nemesign that's multiplayer, like you could get a subscription to have more like character slots, so you can have more alts to play around with.
Hmm.
Things like that. Yeah, I lean a little more towards that for like something that I would hypothetically do, but I don't mind it if I see it like in an online game.
Gotcha. I always kind of like the system that Elite Dangerous has as well. It's like an online space combat simulator thing. They their pricing is a mix of the old school off the shelf pricing. So you can't go buy a boxed version or anything as far as I know, but it's on, I think I bought mine copy through Steam, and you just pay the upfront costs. It's like $40 or whatever. And then you've got the game, and then you never have to pay another penny if you don't want to. They do have like an in-game some kind of credit system, but I forget what it's for. I think it's only for cosmetics, like, or that's all I ever used it for. Like if you wanted a custom paint job on your spaceship or something like that. But it didn't affect gameplay. There was no pay to win, as far as I know, and the other game mechanics that had nothing to do with money was that there was no leveling up or grinding really of any kind. There was really just like there's a little bit of grinding just to like make some in-game cash to like buy the next ship or whatever. But it was actually very short-lived. So once you learned how to play the game and the mechanics, it was actually your knowledge of how to play that unlocked more stuff more than anything else. And if I started like a brand new character and I wanted to grind just long enough to have enough cash to like buy a fancy ship, it was like 4 or 5 hours of gameplay. And then I could have like the best ship in that other alternate account. But then like back on my primary character, like there's a point at which you make enough money in game, virtual money, that like you're effectively infinitely rich, and the adventure and the reason to keep playing is to keep getting more skilled at playing. And I thought that was really fun. And so like the premise of the game is that you're like exploring the solar system, like a 1-to-1 scale of the Milky Way. And you could kind of take like the trader path where you're just like, arbitrage, moving supplies between one star station or like a space station or another for a profit, or you could do the combat thing where you're out there claiming bounties, or you could play player versus player and that kind of stuff. So it was kind of like a pretty classic like space game like that, where you kind of choose a profession, but there was no class system, there was no leveling up, there was no skills even in the game. It was just literally like, do you know how to play the game well? And there's all this free online resources to learn how to play better. And your enjoyment of the game went up by being more skilled as a player. And there was zero pay to win. So that was, I really liked that model.
Nice.
And when they would release expansions, they would then ask you for another like $20, the same way you used to pay for an expansion pack at a game store. But you knew exactly what you were getting.
Yeah,
And
that sounds kind of right up my alley. I've never played it, but I've heard good things. And it sounds like an organic way to do progression in an online game where it's not tied to just sinking time and or money into it. You have to actually improve on a specific skill set.
yeah, and I thought that was really fun. They also kind of had a little fun with Star Citizen, because they would say basically like, yeah, everything that Star Citizen says they'll ship one day, like we're actually shipping. Like when you play our game, what we say it does that thing today. Not in some
Yeah,
far off promise thing.
right. That's another marketing tactic, of course, is like roasting your peers in game development. Very risky, but definitely something you can do.
It was pretty easy for them to roast him in that case, I think, because all they had to say was like, hey, our game is good and it works.
It
Unlike some
exists.
games. Yeah, it exists in a fully baked normal kind of form. And that was like as hard as they ever roasted anybody. But it worked for me. I was just like, yeah, I've quote unquote played the Star Citizen demo. I don't know what you'd even call it. But I was like, Wow, this is a long way away from Wing Commander, you know?
Right.
So anyway, yeah, I don't know if I answered all your questions there, but yeah.
I think you nailed it. Yeah, just kind of went down the line there. What else? Yeah, so that's staying stable. Do you have any other like new projects on the horizon or other unfinished ones that you're thinking of picking up?
I do. I have decided though to go old school with that and basically not really talk about stuff until it's done. If you go back to my X profile far enough, you'll see me posting about demo games that I built that I have not launched, or maybe I had a demo or something out there. And yeah, I don't know. I got a couple things, but I think I've still got a couple features I want to release for Stranger Sips. And then I think the reason I'm switching to this isn't because I'm afraid to talk publicly about what I'm working on, because everybody does that and it's totally fine. I think I just love the feeling of having something like fully playable with a complete game loop, and like giving it to somebody and say, this is not just a demo, like please play it and I'll improve it. And it's a complete experience, at least for whatever it is. And I also found that people stuck around more when I was talking to them at that point instead of early in game development. I feel like there's so many indie devs working on so many projects at this point. It's a little hard, at least for me, to gain any kind of attention for a game when it's still in a demo mode for me. So, yeah.
Yeah, I definitely know what you mean there. Do you have plans to bring people on to like playtest demo games that you're working on to kind of get feedback preliminary way, kind of like what you did with the gradual rollout of Stranger Sips, or
I will. Yeah. Go
gotcha.
ahead. Yeah, I don't know when that's going to happen is the thing. After Stranger Sips had kind of been out there a while, I mostly just took a break, honestly. I haven't actively worked on a game project in at least a few months. And I don't know. I mean, because we've talked about them on the Mud Coders Guild, that I think I have 4 games that are in some partial state of playable. So I'll probably just pick up one of those, or maybe even the 10 key game that we talked about a little bit. But yeah, when I have something, I'll definitely tell people about it, but we'll see. I'll probably come to Mud Coders Guild first for any playable, early gameplay feedback for sure.
Nice. Good to hear. If it's any indication of my mental state over the last few months, I completely forgot about the 10 key game.
Oh,
even though I think we each sunk like a week of development time into it.
Yeah. I think that would be fun to finish, just because there was actually a game loop that we got working in a relatively short time. But like a bunch of things kind of hit outside of like in life around that time. And so like you and I were talking about it, but then I kind of dropped off the project and disappeared for a little while and whatever. But I think that was a really cool little self-contained online multiplayer thing that I wanted to release as a free game. That would just be like on the web ad supported kind of thing as an experiment.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. Yeah. So maybe that one, just because I feel like it's the closest to done.
Nice. Yeah. Kind of like low hanging fruit in a way.
That's the trick I'm trying to tell myself. Yeah. It's easy, right? Finish it. Yeah. It'll be fine.
Definitely have been there before. And sometimes it's worked and other times it's not been as easy.
Well, the last time we talked, I was interviewing you all about your game projects, Nemesign and stuff. How are things going there?
Oh, absolutely atrocious. I really, like I said, fell off the wagon as far as productivity on any creative projects, and also getting far too into like consuming media, including video games, versus creating. Guilty of that. I actually had to refresh my memory today and be like, what was the last thing that I did? And about 3 months ago, I fixed a handful of bugs in May on the client side and on the server side. These were like known bugs around combat. So I just cleaned that up and I looked at my to-do list and haven't touched that in a little while. But I think what the roadblock that I hit was kind of adding, I have a roadmap to like calling it finished enough to have a playable game loop.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the remaining items on the roadmap, including the next up, are like creating and finalizing assets, creating a new area, putting together a survey for playtest feedback, cleaning up the data. So it's a mix of creating assets outside of code and then essentially like chores. And I'm like, oh, I guess I can see why I got kind of stuck. But then even in the backlog, there are some major features that people might consider very important that I just don't have. Like, for example, there's no way for players to really communicate with each other in game. And I had some ideas of how to do that without it just being like a free text chat. And so I was trying to decide if I try to finish those ideas or if I ship without anything, or if I just do like a text chat, which I then think I would have to like moderate somewhat. And really, I just kind of fell off completely after kind of doing some feature work and those few bugs. I have had a couple of people check it out in its current state because it's still online and got some good feedback from them. I just haven't done anything with it. When I hit that roadblock a few months ago, I did pick up one of my demo projects in kind of a similar fashion to what it sounds like you're doing, where I had done a project for a game jam maybe 2 years ago at this point using Godot. And I wanted to see how much further I could take it and kind of go beyond its initial very small scope, slightly buggy, and turn it into like a full-fledged game with like a narrative, multiple ways of playing it, something that I could put out there on Steam or other platforms. And I got quite a bit further than the jam version. I think that I have something there that is promising. But again, I kind of hit some tangles of like, well, what exactly is the story going to be? I had a vague theme in mind. I had some mechanics that I added to support a narrative, like a dialogue system. But then when I was getting into the specifics, I got a little bit lost. And then I kind of fell off of that too. So I really have not done any significant game development for a while. And then, not really an excuse, but I kind of was having a lot of issues with my energy levels outside of work and even at work and like brain fog. So I spent a couple of months focusing on like physical health and just kind of like hit my goals with that. And then my next up was like, I should try at least a few days a week to sit down and do 45 minutes of like creative work, writing, music, game development, visual art, anything. And it's been really hard to get even into that mode again and that level of productivity, which is almost nothing. Like that's just over 2 hours a week if I were to hit that goal. And so, yeah, that's where I'm at. I think I have some bad habits to clean up as far as wasting time, basically. But I was hoping that by having this chat, it would like put my feet to the fire to do that by putting it out there and maybe being a cautionary tale for people. Because I remember when we last spoke 8 months ago, I was like, well, maybe in a few months I'll have reached my goal. So, just a cautionary tale that, when you have that goal in sight, don't lose track of it. Because if you slip just before the finish line, it can be hard to pull yourself back up and cross it. But I still hope to do that. I still have the means to do it. It's just a matter of using my time towards that goal and not other basically distractions at this point.
Do you find it is, well, I don't know. Can you describe a little bit about what's difficult to get started? Is it being out of the habit, you think, mostly, or?
I think that's a huge part of it. I think one thing I will say is my day-to-day has changed a lot with my work, which I'm a programmer by day also. So by the end of the workday, I often just don't want to continue looking at a computer and writing code.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm doing stuff that's more like quote unquote fun. And then once I start doing that, it's hard for me to then like switch my brain back to like productivity, doing something technical, problem solving, creative. And yeah, I think I'm out of the habit, and almost in some ways would liken it to like a physical exercise where if you stop doing it for a while, maybe because of an injury, you kind of like decondition. And so if you are hurt and you don't properly do kind of physical therapy and training to get back your previous mobility, you could end up, walking with a limp or having trouble walking at all, and get yourself into a place where it's harder to quite literally get back on your feet. So I feel like that's happened in a sense where the old habit and workflow that I had, and even the way of thinking that I had of kind of in a lot of my free time, at least thinking about my project, if not actually working on it, always having it in the back of my head, is just not there anymore. And I can get it back there. It's just a matter of ramping it up. And I've had trouble just getting and staying on the ramp, so to speak. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel you there. Oh, go ahead.
No, I'm glad you can empathize. I guess I was just going to finish by saying it's a little bit of lack of motivation, but also like largely a lack of discipline. Because I think if I were more disciplined, the motivation would show up.
Like doing it even when you don't want to do it, just to be in the habit.
Exactly. Just, I have a list of things to do. And even if I don't feel like it, just checking some things off the list, taking a swing at it, I think might get me back into really feeling motivated to take it on and wanting to complete it.
Yeah. I think getting Stranger Sips out there for me was, it was a big milestone just to have it done. I mean, at some point I could always add more features, but it's like you said, it's done enough to be a complete thing. And it was really exciting for a few months, but I definitely don't spend much time working on it. I'm trying to finish that one feature that I was talking about, the follow-up thing, but I'm actually kind of looking forward to just having that finished. And other than support emails, which are pretty rare because the game's actually really stable and very few people have complaints, it's nice to just let it do its thing. And I can say that in the year or so I was working on it, there's probably 9 months where I was working on it super regularly, and I'm relieved to kind of be taking a break. It's nice. But I know what you mean about the motivation. Like, I don't know when I'm going to next feel motivated or feel the itch to like get back into active game development the way that I was. Because I think since you and I first met online, it's been a few years now, and I've done, the one complete game and then like 3 or 4 demos that were, various levels of interesting. But this year in particular, like, I've just been spending a lot more time outside. When I'm done with work, pretty much done with computers as well. And yeah, I don't know. I think the motivation has always come back for me eventually. So I'm kind of just relying on it organically coming back. But yeah, I feel this sort of like need to just take a deep rest from all the expectations I put on myself to finish it and all that other kind of stuff, Like I would seriously work and then eat dinner, spend a couple hours hanging out, and then I would sometimes like drink a coffee at 10 p.m. and stay up till 2 and just code and code and code. And man, I haven't done that in months, and at least for now, I really don't miss it. But I know exactly what you mean about I also feel like if I got back in the habit, I could probably recondition and like maybe not go to that extreme, staying up super late every night, but I could be chipping away, a small feature every month or something like that.
Yeah, that sounds like a pretty healthy workflow. It can't be crunch time all the time, and similarly can't be couch time all the time if you're planning on actually achieving things. And yeah, I definitely have gone through periods of crunch and then complete or partial stoppage. And I think the motivation does come back. I think when I dropped Nemesign for a bit and picked up the demo game, I got pretty motivated towards that second project, and then that kind of fell off as well.
Hmm.
And I guess the difference between you and I is like when you kind of stopped crunching away on Stranger Sips, it was after it had became a full-fledged thing in its own right. And then kind of your pivot there was towards like, well, how do I extend this and market it and make it a sustainable thing, as opposed to like crunching it just to like have it exist.
Yeah, and I will say on the marketing side, I found that there was only so much I could do in a given day that was useful. And so it was I mean, I'm not an expert marketer by any means, but it didn't take me hours of coding time to do marketing, you know? It would be like 3 or 4 hours a week, maybe. And that was mostly on weeks when I was trying to launch a new ad or trying to come up with new creative or whatever. Most of the time, once it was out there, so long as it was performing reasonably well, I was mostly just like checking on it 10 minutes once a day and just being like, promotion's still working. Okay. Like there's nothing to do other than wait for the players to continue to come in and then, you know, try to make sure the game was always up. But, you know, once I fixed the things that were making it unreliable, it's pretty much been solid. So it's kind of been like on maintenance mode for that whole time. But yeah, it's funny you mentioned like the difference being that I stopped crunching on Stranger Sips after it was done. I was like, while that's strictly true, if you only look at Stranger Sips, there was like every indie developer, I'm sure, like there's a huge wake of dead games that I never finished that I totally gave up on. So this is more the exception than the rule, I think, even for me.
Right. It's like the tip of the iceberg. And I'm sure that's true of a lot of different media. Like I imagine a lot of musicians have dozens of songs they started writing and never finished, much less released.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just part of doing creative work. It's just that a game is usually a lot more, well, maybe I'm wrong about this, but more involved than like a sketch.
It does. Yeah. I mean, you can make tiny games, but I find that I'm just not super motivated to work on those usually. It feels like writing an indie game is similar to like in terms of time commitment. And sometimes you just have to kind of ruminate on it, and you can sit down and try to code, but sometimes it just nothing really clicks for several days in a row. And you're just like, I'm out of ideas or I'm stuck or whatever. But it feels like making a decent sized indie game is similar in effort to writing like an average sized novel or like an album or something, where it can take months or a year or more. And then when it's done, it's kind of, as long as it's a self-contained experience, it's kind of done. Like you don't necessarily need to do anything else on it. But there's a huge upfront effort you put in with kind of an uncertain outcome. And I would say, at least the way I approach this stuff, like it's at least minimum several months to do even like a very modest sized thing.
Yeah, 100%. I think I've mentioned before, like game jams are nice for like forcing a smaller scope.
Mm-hmm.
But I agree, you've got to have like kind of a specific idea of like a very succinct game loop or like goal or mechanic to focus on. And that can be hard to come up with, much less all of the other stuff that goes into actually making it into at least like a prototype. And then doing all of that in a week takes kind of clearing other stuff off your calendar, which just may not be possible.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I hear you there. And then you end up with, maybe you put something in the game jam and people vote on it, or a few people play it, and it may or may not be finished. It may or may not be buggy. But then for me, at least, it does end up on the shelf of like, well, it's not really finished. It's just technically playable. And then like, do I have the motivation to go and make it into something more real, or is it just going to sit and be like a portfolio piece type thing? And to what end? So I guess the moral of the story there is just do that if you have an idea that excites you and you want to have fun. Yeah.
looking back, I wish I would have chosen to work on more game projects when I was young that were 2 to 3 months in scope. I'm sure I didn't really have the mindset to do that because I was always wanted to do big, ambitious things, which is a total trap for me because, I would play some AAA game and then be like, oh, I want to make something like that alone by myself in 6 months. It's like, yeah, there's a reason those games take a lot longer than that for huge teams, But yeah, I don't know. Can't change the past, I guess. At least I got a career in programming out of it. So
Yeah, exactly. Same here. And I don't know if this is still the case in the industry, but at least when I was doing interviews, I did find that mentioning game development at least would like perk people's eyebrows
oh yeah.
a little bit. And yeah, some of my current colleagues even, will be like in the work Slack, like, oh, I have an itch page. I just did this game jam. And it's like, oh, that's cool. Like at least it's something to bond/commiserate over,
Mhm.
which can be neat. Yeah.
Well, best of luck getting back into the habit. I was one of those people that have played Nemesign, and I think it's very cool. I'd love to see your vision come to life, and you got a lot of the parts there, I think, for sure.
Yeah, thanks. Me too. I think I just need to re-immerse myself in it, and you and a lot of others have given me a lot of really useful feedback to apply, and appreciate the kind words. And also, like, if folks are listening to this and you have advice on how to unstick yourself if you're in this situation, I would love to hear it. And if nothing else, this could be like something I listen back to like kick myself into gear. Like, oh, I don't want to go another 8 months, and at least in this area of my life, have nothing to show for it. I have really improved my leg press numbers at least in the past 8 months, but
well, you got something to show for it then.
yeah, exactly.
My leg numbers have definitely gone way down in the last 8 months.
That happens. Yeah. The deconditioning analogy I used really did happen to me, where I got in really bad shape after an injury. So I've gone through that physically, came out the other end after a lot of time and effort doing better. And hopefully I can do that, mentally and creatively as well. Yeah. Yeah. What else to discuss? So any other tips for creatives, or like tips for creative marketing?
On the marketing side, again, I'm not an expert. I'm not one of these people that has all this clever ways to attract attention. But the thing that I think worked the best is, even if something is working just a little, if it's effective, just keep doing it. It's like, just do a little bit of it every day. I think part of what drove me to try the marketing contractor and stuff is that I just wanted to step on the gas and have more players and grow it even faster. Even though it turned out, if I just kept doing what I was doing kind of low key, it was totally fine. I just had to be patient, and I wasn't patient. For me, I would say patience is probably the biggest lesson for me. Is I think it added to the break that I took after that was all done. Meaning, like, it added to the amount of recovery time I wanted, as opposed to, I could have just been a little more chill about it, probably gotten basically the same outcome, and it was fine. Yeah. I think I'm also really glad to have at least tried it. I feel very fortunate that I was able to sink some money into that and just be like, I will always wonder if it would work if I just put more money behind it, and it didn't. So I feel like I have a pretty clear answer on that one. But yeah, I don't know. Not much in the way of advice, I guess. Just if you're out there. Yeah. Oh, actually, okay. I will throw out a couple of things. One is, I reconnected with an old game I hadn't played in a long time that I loved, which was SimCity 4 Deluxe. I've been having a ton of fun with. That's been part of my chill out time, is I've been playing 3 or 4 hours of SimCity like every couple of days for the last month or so. And then the other thing is, I found this YouTube channel called, what is it called? Film something. It's mostly for writers and filmmakers. Film Courage, I think it's called. and they have some of the best talks and interviews and stuff for creative people in general, I think. And they have a lot of things that I really identified with, even though I don't have anything to do with film, but just around saying, hey, if you're one of these people that has like a creative drive, it's totally okay for you to pursue it. It's don't feel like, you necessarily have to go the career route of just doing the practical thing and all that. And I don't know how else to describe it other than it's very, I just feel great after listening to him, as opposed to if I listen to some kind of hustle culture thing, or it's like, hey, here's how to grow your business or your marketing or whatever. I feel a little bit drained and be like, well, I think I maybe learned something new there. I'll try, but it just feels a little hollow. Whereas this film courage stuff, God, I feel great after listening to this stuff. It makes me want to go do things, and it's free content. So it's cool.
Film courage. Yeah, I'm subscribing right now because I have looked for stuff like this, and sometimes I can find some cool creative advice, but I tend to get a lot of the other advice you talked about where it's either hustle culture, how to grow your numbers, how to B2B SaaS marketing, or it gets into like the very mystical self-improvement stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And this seems like a nice in between. So I'll have to look into that.
Yeah, I'll send you 2 or 3 of my favorite videos from there on Slack
Nice.
that I thought were especially, I don't want to call it motivating or whatever. It just reminded me what I love about doing this in a way that nothing else did. So I don't know how else to describe it. It's amazing.
Yeah. Also on the topic of synchronicity, you mentioned playing SimCity to like chill out a little bit. And coincidence, I'm wearing a SimCity shirt today.
No joke.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. So I know you can't see me on camera right now, but SimCity t-shirt. I think I want to say SimCity 2000 or something.
That was a great version. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a classic. Yeah. Well, yeah, I think what I've taken away from your marketing stuff is like you can always throw more money at marketing. It does not always have a result. So it has to be kind of targeted in a specific way. There has to be some organicness, and then you can throw money at it. And then that may help the magnitude of the success or may not.
Yeah. Digital marketing, especially if you're buying ads, I think is you can basically sink infinite money into it. So it's tricky, but like the other thing people pay to do is they try to give you all these tips and tricks on how to go viral or something for free. I think both are extremely difficult. And I just got the ads to a place where I was happy enough with their performance, and adding more expertise and time just didn't help.
Yeah.
If I just taken that money and just kept doing what I been doing with almost no change, I would have gotten more for my dollar, right? I would have spent the same money but gotten more players probably.
Yeah. I did see some of the ads that I think must have been written by your contractor, and I could tell like they were not your voice, and they seemed very clickbaity. And that's like there's like a fine line of like just clickbaity enough to get the click without being like obvious about it. And it was a little on the like overly spicy side of that line.
Yeah, that was the part of the experiment. Actually, I purposely wanted to try something completely different and just say like, hey, suggest something, try it. I'm in this experimentation mode, so just go for it, because I figured,
and that works.
Yeah, I figured some of the ads I never would have written, but like because I'm not funny enough to write them, or they're just goofy, or there was a couple of like emotional hooks ones that I was like, oh, I would never think. I would never think to write that.
Yeah, it did get some really interesting replies from what I saw, and that can be a vehicle to like on something like X. That can be a means towards having something go viral, and then it's kind of furthering your reach even more. And it's just a matter of luck, maybe, as to which emotional hook pays off in that way.
Yeah. So I purposely didn't want to just have someone do exactly what I was doing. I wanted to try something completely different as well. Because I figured if it was
Yeah.
just going to be my approach, then why was I hiring a contractor? So,
Yeah, that makes absolute sense. Like,
yeah.
if you're going to have them imitate your voice, like just run it as your own account. Yeah. So good on you and on them for experimenting a little bit, even if it had mixed results. It was definitely interesting to see from the outside.
Yeah, it's cool to hear from someone like you where you saw kind of the before and after, to see that you definitely noticed there was a change. So that's, I don't know. Nobody else really had that perspective, I think, because I've been talking to you about this stuff for quite a while. I will say the contractor themselves was actually amazing and super professional and super easy to work with.
Yeah.
And like
That's good.
really a nice person. So like that side of the experience was great, you know?
Yeah. That always makes it easier to have a kind of a creative feedback loop with someone if you at least get along.
Yeah.
Yeah. I am far from a marketing expert. So any of my like creative social accounts, like the Muscarian Softworks account, I just run as if it's me,
Mm-hmm.
but with a slant towards talking about games and following game developers and shit posting a little bit about it. Not that I can say that that's had a lot of success, but I've seen others have success with that. They probably have more to show for it in terms of like actually having released the game, and that helps them. But you can also go pretty far in terms of like, how do I put this? Like going far off the beaten path with your like marketing personality. Like I think I've sent a few things to you from 3D Glyptics, and they're marketing a game that has a demo called BC Piezophile. And their persona for their account is essentially like a schizophrenic person. And that's not to put down people with mental illnesses, but it's just really random stuff and like rants about religion and like strange pictures and like roasting people that are posting negative reviews of the game, roasting streamers who are refusing to stream the demo and things like that. And it seems to have worked for them in terms of following numbers and wish list numbers, although it probably also turned some people off too. So there's that. I would hesitate to do that myself. I feel more natural just like keeping it at the level of like I'm a somewhat normal, real person who's a little goofy. One thing I did find, like that was another project of mine that I again fell off of, that was a little helpful, was doing video content. And I did those like nano reviews videos for a little while
Mm-hmm.
that I think I sent to you. I did notice those were without any marketing or any even having much reach on any socials, they would get a few hundred views. And it was often people watching the whole thing. And then they would often follow. And so I doubled my follower account with that, which means nothing because I went from like 30 to 60. But that seemed to at least have some impact on people viewing my YouTube channel. And I was like, well, if I keep doing this, it'll probably pay off in terms of numbers eventually. But then, of course, I stopped doing it. And I think, again, I was kind of like having this consumption habit of playing games after work and then trying to turn it into a creative project and like make something of it. And then that felt like too much work. And then I stopped. And so I guess what I did get out of that is, beyond some new followers, learning some video editing skills. But that is something that maybe is worth trying to like get some creative spark back, is like not just mindlessly consuming, which has been my last couple of months, but like consuming with a purpose, or like analyze the thing and kind of synthesize some new ideas and like think about what you're doing, even if it's just in the form of like a short review. I don't know, could be a way to get back into thinking creatively about something that you've become deconditioned about.
Yeah, and I liked your nano review style. And if just to kind of dwell on that for a little bit, if it's something that I totally get, by the way, the challenge of just keeping up the pace of releasing stuff like that, because it's a time investment, and then you got to video edit it and make it feel reasonably tight and, well put together and all that stuff.
Trying to do one a week and have it include 4 demos, or sorry, it was like 3 or 4 demos, or like 1 demo and 1 game from my backlog and 1 early release game. Felt like a lot because I felt like I had to play each one enough to have a good impression of it. And I had to record some of it, edit it, do a script, do a voiceover. So yeah, you're exactly right.
Yeah. So I think the quality of the content was good, and you saw people responding. So like, if you could find some way to like trim it down or focus it in an area where it just took less total time, and assuming you enjoyed it enough to keep doing it on a regular basis, I could see you like doing well there, growing your audience, and then like as you're working on your games, you can be like, oh, let me give you an update on what I'm working on, and you sort of like build your following, and then as you have more stuff to show and as you're preparing to have a playable demo, then you have like an engaged audience ready to go. So that could be very cool.
Yeah, that was definitely the idea, right? And I think if I were to pick it back up, I would do a single game per video, have it be a much shorter video, or maybe maxes out at 2 minutes, and not have a set schedule, but just do them regularly. And that would be more sustainable. And then, kind of the idea was like what you said, intersperse that with video devlog updates. And but yeah, what I did find is that playing the games, writing the review script, editing it, editing the video, and recording it would take up more of my free time than I wanted. However, I didn't go the healthy route of like becoming more efficient. I just blew it off instead. So
been there.
Yeah.
Totally get that.
Whomst among us hasn't?
Well, it takes so much effort to get into a rhythm, even on a simple thing, and like really get it down to a nice, tight thing. So yeah, it's tough. It's tough.
For sure. Habits, everybody's different, but for me at least, habits are easier to fall out of than they are to get into or get back into. And so it's a process.
Yeah, same here. Well, shall we wrap it up for this time? Thanks again for coming on. Appreciate it, man.
Yeah, of course. Appreciate the invite. Glad that, going back to kind of the whole theme of the latter half of this, good on you for getting back into the podcasting habit. Yeah, I remember a number of the older episodes being a pretty good inspiration for like, just learning from other people's creative habits. So I hope that whoever may listen to this can glean some of that out of our experiences. And it was good catching up with you about the postmortem of Stranger Sips a little bit too.
Yeah, it's good to be doing the podcast thing. I've been kind of itching to get back into doing this. And yeah, thanks for letting me rant about the kind of the postmortem thing. It feels like kind of putting a bow on it a little bit. So
yeah, very nice. Definitely encourage folks to check it out and poke at it a little bit if you're interested in that kind of thing.
This has been the Wilderness and the Wellspring podcast. You can find me online on Twitter and Blue Sky under the username @JeffLuntGames. You can also find my website, jeffluntgames.com. Thanks for listening. See you next time.